Class 7, a new session's begun. Deep learning's power for intrusion detection. With Ensemble modals, the victory is won. With clustering and trees, you'll reach perfection.
Presented by the one and only Dr. Sayed.
Welcome everyone to Deep Learning for Intrusion Detection. Today is an exciting one as we're laying the foundation for some of the most powerful algorithms out there. Specifically, we'll be breaking down trees, ensemble models, and clustering. Think of these as the fundamental tools in your machine learning toolkit. They might not be deep learning yet, but they are crucial to understanding the advanced models we'll get to later. By the end of this lecture, you'll be able to hit these three main learning goals. First, you'll clearly understand the differences between tree-based models and linear models. Why would we choose one over the other? Second, we'll cover the benefits and construction of ensemble models. Ensemble just means group, so we'll see why having a group of models is better than one. And finally, we'll explore the basics of clustering, particularly the mechanics of the popular k-means algorithm. These concepts are foundational, so let's make sure we walk away feeling confident about them. Our first main topic is decision trees. The name gives you a big hint. They work like a tree structure with branches and leaves. At its core, a decision tree is incredibly intuitive because it mimics how we make decisions every day. We ask a series of simple questions to arrive at an answer. It's one of the most accessible machine learning algorithms to visualize and explain, which is why we're starting here. So, how does it actually work? A decision tree utilizes a sequence of questions to classify data based on its attributes. Imagine you're building an animal classification app. The tree starts at the top, called the root node, and asks a question. Does the animal have horns? If yes, you go down one branch. If no, you go down another. Then, at the next branch, it asks another question. Maybe, does it have 4 legs? You keep splitting the data with these simple questions until you reach a leaf node, which gives you the final classification, like this is a deer or this is a frog. It's a powerful system of if-then-else logic. To build the most efficient tree, we need to ask the best questions at each step. We want to find the split that helps us separate the data with the fewest questions possible. The method we use is called information gain, IG. Simply put, information gain measures the decrease in impurity at each split. Impurity is a term for how mixed up the data is in a node. If a node is highly impure, it means it contains a mix of classifications. We want to find the split that makes the children nodes as pure or unmixed as possible. We calculate it as impurity of the parent minus the impurity of the children. The splitting continues until we run out of good questions or we meet a set stopping rule. Once the tree is fully grown, we look at the leaf nodes. A leaf node is where the decision path ends. The classification at each leaf is determined by the majority class among the data samples that land there. So, if 90% of the samples that end up in a leaf node are cat, then any new data point that follows that same path will be classified as a cat. It's a simple but very effective majority rules system. Decision trees offer some fantastic benefits. They are interpretable. You can literally see the decision path. They train quickly, handle nonlinear relationships beautifully, and they don't require feature scaling, which saves us time in data preparation. But they also have challenges. They can be very sensitive to the tree depth setting, how many splits you allow. And most critically, they can easily overfit. Here's a simple story. Imagine you're helping a friend choose a movie. You ask simple yes-no questions. Do you like action? Do you prefer a long movie? This is fast and clear. But if you keep adding too many detailed questions, your friend might get confused, and you could end up picking a movie that's perfect on paper but not enjoyable in reality. That's overfitting. Too many details can lead to poor real-world choices. To tackle the issue of overfitting and improve performance, we introduce ensemble models. If a single tree is good, wouldn't a forest of trees be better? That's the core idea. We're moving from relying on one model's decision to relying on the collective wisdom of many models. The goal of ensemble models is simple. Combine multiple models to improve generalization performance over any single model. If one model makes a bad prediction, the others can correct it. The mechanism is often averaging predictions from multiple models. This process significantly reduces the likelihood of overfitting and improves overall prediction accuracy. Think of it like getting a second, third, or fourth opinion before making a big decision. The consensus is usually more reliable than a single expert. While ensemble models are powerful, they aren't perfect. They have two main challenges. First, they are resource intensive. Training and running multiple models in parallel requires significantly more computational resources and time than training just one. The second, and often more important challenge, is interpretability. It's easy to understand one decision tree, but when you have hundreds of models working together and averaging their predictions, it becomes much harder to dive in and explain exactly why the final prediction was made. Now let's look at the most common type of ensemble model, which is the random forest. The name says it all. It's a collection of randomly built decision trees. It's a workhorse in machine learning, offering a great balance of performance and relatively high interpretability compared to other complex models. The concept is an extension of decision trees that uses multiple trees to make more robust predictions. The methodology relies on a technique called bagging or bootstrap aggregating. We're moving from bagging to boosting now, starting with AdaBoost or adaptive boosting. The core idea here is to build models sequentially, one after the other, and each new model focuses on fixing the mistakes of the previous one. The process goes like this. We train an initial model, then we compute the error. Crucially, we increase the weights on the training cases the model got wrong, telling the next model, hey, pay special attention to this data point. We then train a new model on the re-weighted set and repeat the cycle, building a very strong learner out of many weak learners. While AdaBoost was a breakthrough, gradient boosting is the more modern and widely used successor. It also builds trees sequentially to minimize the errors from the previous trees. But instead of reweighting the data points like AdaBoost, gradient boosting uses a slightly different mathematical process to build the next tree based on the errors, or residuals, of the previous tree. Essentially, the new tree tries to predict how wrong the combined previous trees were. We combine the previous trees with the new one and repeat until the error is minimized. This method is incredibly powerful and has a great reputation for high accuracy predictions. While AdaBoost was a breakthrough, gradient boosting is the more modern and widely used successor. It also builds trees sequentially to minimize the errors from the previous trees. But instead of re-weighting the data points like AdaBoost, gradient boosting uses a slightly different mathematical process to build the next tree based on the errors or residuals of the previous tree. Essentially, the new tree tries to predict how wrong the combined previous trees were. We combine the previous trees with the new one and repeat until the error is minimized. This method is incredibly powerful and has a great reputation for high accuracy predictions. Shifting gears to an entirely different type of learning, i.e. clustering. This falls under unsupervised learning, meaning we don't have pre-labeled groups. The purpose is to group data points into clusters based on similarity without pre-labeled groups. It's like finding natural groupings in your data. It's incredibly useful for things like exploratory data analysis, just trying to understand what your data looks like, customer segmentation, grouping customers by buying habits, and even anomaly detection, finding data points that don't fit into any group. The crucial first step in any clustering algorithm is defining similarity. We need to ask two fundamental questions. First, what is our basis for similarity? Are we comparing by color, size, ingredients, or location? Second, how do we calculate similarity? This usually involves some distance measure, like Euclidean distance, to quantify how close two data points are to each other in our feature space. Let's illustrate with this example. Here we have a beer bottle and a carton of apple juice. If our basis for similarity was color, we might look at the golden color and say, these things are very similar. Put them in the same cluster. If our basis was that they are both cold liquids, someone drinks, again, we might group them. However, if we choose ingredients as our basis, the apple juice and beer are made from very different ingredients. Understanding what we use as our basis for similarity or difference is the key decision we need to make when applying clustering. Among the many clustering algorithms, k-means clustering is a great place to start. It's straightforward, easy to implement, and very effective for many problems. The k in k-means simply represents the number of clusters we decide to look for. The k-means algorithm is all about assigning data points to clusters based on their proximity to the nearest cluster center and trying to minimize the variance within each cluster. The process is iterative. 1. Initialize cluster centers randomly. We just pick k random points in our data to be the initial centers. 2. Assign data points to the nearest center. Every point in the dataset finds its closest center and joins that cluster. 3. Update cluster centers to the mean of all the points currently assigned to it. 4. Repeat steps 2 and 3 until convergence. This means we stop when the centers stop moving significantly. The objective is to minimize the sum of the squared distances from every point to its assigned cluster center. K-means has clear strengths. It's simple to implement, converges fast, and is a highly effective initial clustering method. However, it also has notable weaknesses. First, it requires specifying the number of clusters, k, beforehand, which can be a guess. Second, it assumes linear cluster boundaries. Imagine sorting a box of mixed candies by color. It's easy if you decide on 3 groups, red, green, and yellow, and the candies are clearly colored. But if you discover some with mixed colors or shades that don't fit neatly into your groups, it becomes tricky. K-means struggles when the data doesn't form these simple spherical groups, especially with complex or uneven data distributions. And that brings us to the end of our core content. We've covered trees, ensemble models, and clustering. Your final task before our next session is to take some time for self-study and review. Go back through your notes and slides, and make sure you can articulate the key differences between these models. Understanding these foundational concepts is the best way to prepare for our upcoming deep dive into deep learning